think let's get rolling here. So I'm just going to read the first slide. So beyond the purchase and how to streamline operations as a new owner. So that's our topic for today. And I'd like to introduce Dr. Kerksick. So really nice to meet you. We're just chatting. We've met a few times before, but it's just really great to have you. Maybe you can tell
Thank
me a
you.
little bit about yourself. I don't know. I think you've been with Rev for roughly 9-10 years, and you're the director of professional operations or professional services. So go ahead and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Correct. So I'll give you a quick background. I graduated in '02 from SCO and actually started my practice cold right after I graduated, and was in private practice for until 2017. I sold the practice to my partner. Um, and I did that because I was moving to a different state, and have worked for Revolution since I left practice. So it's going on 10 years. While I was in practice, I used Revolution as well. So I always like to share with our customers that I've been on both sides of the fence. And one of the things that I love doing is working with customers and trying to help them be more efficient and come up with ways that we can just maximize their output so they can hit their top level of success.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so you did a startup. That's wonderful. It's a tough go the first couple of years typically. So we do startup work with the Williams Group and consulting, and I don't know. Sometimes it takes up to 2 years. Sometimes you can get going positive cash flow within the first year. So yes, but then when you have your startup, yeah, you can pick your location, you can pick your staff, you know, it's all yours. It's basically you're creating it from ground up. So it's quite a big project, that's for sure. So yeah, good for you. So just a little bit about me. I'm fairly familiar with RevolutionEHR because I've been with the Williams Group since 2003. So 23 years. And I remember in 2006 when RevolutionEHR was coming out with their practice management system and EHR, and it was going to be the first web-based practice management system. So everyone was really excited. Everything was moving to the web at that point in time, and so your software, I think it was the very first, more or less, at least one of the majors that were coming out, in a doctor-driven practice management software system. Yeah, so that's great. So we're almost 20 years from that. So I know your system is really full functionality and very customizable. And yeah, we here at the Williams Group hear nothing but positive. I mean, practice management software in general, it's such a big platform to build and to build it really well, and it's a smaller market, you know, compared to say Apple or other major platforms. So there's a lot to it, but yeah, Revolution's just done a great job. So our clients that have it, yeah, are very pleased with it. So just a little bit of background on us, or me, and the Williams Group. So we've been around since '87, so it's quite a while. We have 3 divisions. One is we started with consulting, both startups and established practices. And then we have a transitions group too that helps buy and sell practices. We do appraisals and whatnot. So we're quite familiar with the topic today. And then we have another back end side of our business where we do tax and accounting for practice owners. So that's a little bit about us. So maybe I'll just, if it's okay, Dr. Kerksick, I'll just give a little intro on the key topics, and then we can kind of just get into the slide deck, so to speak, and I'll probably just throw a bunch of questions at you because I'm kind of excited in a sense to learn your perspective on practices and their efficiencies and putting practice management software into it. So I'll have some comments too from our perspective, but you've lived it and seen it, so certainly you've got the expertise. So we're going to talk about transitioning a practice. So you can think of that in we can think about that in different ways. Like, we can talk about the startup, but that's not necessarily a transition. But when you're buying a practice, you're essentially, yeah, you're transitioning the employees, the staff, the contracts and whatnot. So we'll talk about some transitioning aspects, and really try and discuss a lot about the software and how that impacts a transition. Because in my view, it's probably the biggest part of a practice transition. Even with private equity, when they're buying practices, they'll put in their software system, and that's typically the biggest change factor in buying a practice. And then, yeah, we'll discuss some operational efficiencies, how we see those things, the types of workflows, et cetera. So we'll just have a little discussion about those things. So those are the two major topics. So maybe I'll just start off with this, if that's okay, Dr. Kerksick, a few comments on managing staff. And I'll talk about it in the context of buying a practice, because that's kind of our overall context that we're going to talk about. So when a doctor's buying a practice, typically they're going to want to make sure that if they're a solo practitioner, you don't have to worry about associates. But if I'm going to buy Dr. Kerksick's practice, and she is an associate, then one of the main things I want to make sure is that associate's going to be on board. So I typically want to talk to that associate pretty soon, but not necessarily the staff in a transition. Because obviously, if I'm buying Dr. Kirk's practice and she says, well, I don't know if you're really going to go through with this. You got to get the financing, Brad. You've got to make sure the asset purchase agreement's all put together. There's a lot of things that need to happen before you talk to my staff. And so I'm not letting you talk to them until maybe 2 or 3 days, either before the purchase, or sometimes like right after the purchase. So we have the close, and then you have potentially have a meeting a day or two after the close, or basically the first day, and then announce to the staff. And the main thing there, in my view, on the staff is just to give them comfort that their job is not going away. And practically so if you're buying a practice, that's your main job. And same with the seller's job, is to give the staff some comfort that we're going to transition the ownership, but you are safe and solid with this practice. Unless it's not. Sometimes, if there's another role that might go away, then you have that conversation right away. But just giving the staff comfort on what their benefits are going to be, what their life is going to be like after the acquisition. In my view, it's talking about what's in it for the staff, not necessarily what's in it for me, the purchaser. Is letting the staff know that we can't move forward without your buy-in, and then retaining you as an employee. Because typically, if I'm buying a practice, I'm creating my own company, and then putting all the assets of the practice I'm purchasing into the new company. So there's a lot more to managing the staff than that, but Doc, if you want to make a few more comments on that, and then touch on potentially the patient expectations also, since that's definitely more your world than mine.
Sure. So I would just add, echo definitely what you had mentioned, that I think anytime you are, whether whether you're starting up or whether you're buying an existing practice, staff are really the keys to your kingdom in terms of making sure that you're creating your brand, that brand is representative of you even when you're not there. And the way that sort of thing evolves really comes through, I think, a well thought out plan, but also, it requires a leadership skill set. My advice is always, especially, and I talk to practices about this all the time in the EHR world, that whenever you go through any kind of a change, so certainly a transition of ownership is a major change. It's something for staff. The key is to try to make sure that there's security and that they're comfortable, and have confidence that transition is going to be kind of fluid and very, very smooth. And I think if that happens with the staff, they then can echo that to the patient. So it really staff must be, definitely an integral part of that process. And the best thing you can do as a new leader is to make sure that you know what your vision is and you have a well thought out plan so that you can execute it and do it even and be prepared for pushback. You're likely going to have one or two team members that may not be overly enthralled that there's a new sheriff in town or that there's going to be changes that are made. And so, it does require, that you're going to have to make sure that you're patient and you listen. But I think it's also important if you do get pushback, which is to be expected from a team member, that you can go on ahead and confidently lay out your why. Like, this is my vision. This is why we're going to be doing what we're doing. And trust me, let's give it a try. And if it doesn't work, I have an open door policy. You can come and you can relay your concerns and we'll work through it together as a team.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. That's great. I'm sorry, you were going to add something else?
No, nope.
Great. Yeah, and then I guess with the patient communication, I think there's different ways to handle that when you're buying, in terms of the communication. And practice management systems are great for that, just letting patients know. But one of the key things I think is I mean, letters can be sent out, or some sort of communication or text can be sent out that you're going to see a new doctor in the practice, and then so the patients know that when they come in, they're going to see someone else, and then really pumping up, so to speak, the credentials of the new doctor coming in, so that when the patients come in, they go, "Oh, yeah, this is great." And oftentimes, a new buyer, they're excited. They could be younger. I don't know. They might extend the scope of the practice. So there's a lot of exciting things that I think that can be communicated to the patient base to ensure that those patients are coming back in. And it might even be a good reason to bring them back in also because they haven't been in for a while. So if you're the seller, then I'd want to ask. So a lot of doctors that are buying practices, they need the doctor to stick around for a transition period, be it 3 months or 6 months, or sometimes they want to retain the doctor. But that the doctor's communication to the patients, letting them know that a new doctor, it doesn't really matter if they're an owner, they don't really care much about that. But there's a new doctor. They're great when you come and see them. Here's who they are, their credentials and all that. So just letting the patients know that you're going to see a new doc potentially in the exam room. So yeah, so that communication both to the staff and to the patients is important just to navigate through all that.
I agree. I
Yeah,
agree. And I
yeah.
think there's a number of tools that you can use to tap into that. And I always say anytime you can just create no element of surprise for the patient, it's better. We as consumers, it doesn't necessarily even, that's certainly not limited to an optometry practice at all. But as consumers, if we go in, the example I always like to share is, if you're in a restaurant and you are waiting to be seated and it's a Friday night and it's incredibly crowded, um, you're going to react to that scenario very, very differently. If somebody says, "Here's a pager, we'll call you when your table's ready," generally then you're checking back in, you're wanting to know what's going on. That creates more anxiety versus if the hostess says, looks to me like there's 5 parties ahead of you. We anticipate your table being ready in the next 15 to 20 minutes. You're welcome to check back in. They've just set the landscape totally different where they've given you some idea of what to expect. So that's also something else to keep in mind, is to look at those touch points in the practice to figure out where is it that staff can help to eliminate that element of surprise so that when the doctor walks in, that patient already feels like they know that new doctor.
Mm-hmm. Yep, excellent point. Excellent point. So that reminds me, I think we have a poll question, and before we move on here, so the first one, we have 5 questions altogether. The first one should be the easiest. You got to start out with easy questions. So, are you a staff member or an OD? So that's the easy one for me. I'm not an OD, so I'll give everyone 2 seconds just to fill that out. And I'm not sure how it's being presented on your side, but that shouldn't take too long to navigate through. So, all right. So let's talk about growing the practice after acquisition. Um, I certainly wouldn't. I certainly wouldn't, if I was a new buyer, go in and tell my staff that we're just going to grow because that's our aim. We're going to get after it because you need to get to know the staff initially first, how they're going to react. So I wouldn't necessarily dump the growth idea specifically on the team. So I'd wait a couple months. You got to get to know the staff, know your team, and then you can start implementing different things. I think the same thing is for software too. If you're going to swap out, say say a practice got CompuLink or something else, and you're going to put in Revolution, I wouldn't necessarily let staff know that on day one. I would push that out until you can plan for that. But so I'll just talk about a few things on the growth, and Dr. Kerksick, you could weigh in or tell me, no, no, that's not right, Brad. So a lot of it is on the consulting side is that we do is growth is growth is essentially a function of the schedule in a sense, or for a large part. If you just want to look at the math of it. So if you're seeing 12 patients a day versus saying 16 patients a day, then obviously, if you buy a practice and then you're going to move into a tighter schedule, say 20-minute or 30-minute schedule, or you're going to have more problem-focused exams in the mix. So that's just something that you as a new practice owner, you're going to need to assess that over time. Because when you buy a practice, the demographic is going to be, I wouldn't buy a practice until I knew what the demographic was. Like that's something you need to know during the due diligence process. Like what's the average age of the practice? Is it an older demographic? Is it younger? Because that's going to tell me then, based on potentially how many comprehensives or how many problem focus the current doctor is seeing relative to the comprehensive, and then I can kind of know, if I'm going to come in and increase the scope of practice or do more problem focused. Let's just say, for example, you've got a practice where the average age is say 60 or 55, and then the doctor is seeing 10 comprehensive during the day, but then only say 3 problem focused. Then I would say if you've got an average patient demographic of 60, and you're only seeing 3 problem focus, I know that's an opportunity for growth for me, because if I'm a young doc and then I'm going to do glaucoma, or I'm going to do IPLs or whatever, so I can see what the potential growth for that practice is. So then and Revolution is extremely good at this with respect to the scheduler, of designing a schedule that's going to fit the doctor's scope of practice and the volume of patients they want to see. So that's the math part of it. But really, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, it's growing the practice is largely based on the patient's experience also, because you can't have one without the other. If you only see one patient a day, you're not going to grow, and then if the patient's experience is bad, you're not going to grow either. So it's those are the 2 major variables in growing a practice, if that's your goal. I'll pass the baton to you, Doc, and you can make some comments and as you see fit.
Sure. So again, I think that it's most important to know, like, once you've identified what your brand is and kind of what your why is in terms of like how you're going to administer patient care. If it were me, that would be one of the first things that I would want to do, is kind of state what's important to you, more of a heartfelt perspective to your staff. And it's then gauge their buy-in to see who's buying into what you're saying. What you'll find is you'll have a lot of staff that will go on ahead and embrace, like, this is, especially if they feel like what you're doing makes sense for the practice and for patients, they're going to hop on board, want to do what they can to help. So you can do that a number of ways. You can do various things to promote patient loyalty, or you can, yes, you could offer more options in terms of maybe scheduling times, or make it more convenient for patients to schedule and embrace technology. There's I think a number of things that you can do, little things that will help you with post sale. And certainly, one of the things too, just if you're looking at, like, that's really where an EHR comes in and can be a very, very handy tool for you, is the reporting creates an opportunity for you to have something tangible to measure. I always say the numbers don't lie. So it's great if you want to go ahead and take advantage of, run reports from and you can get scheduled like data regarding your scheduling. How many slots are being booked? How well are we doing with our recalls? You can use your software to kind of assist you with those growth initiatives as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep, yep, very good, very well said. So we'll move on to uh, just a software handoff or software migration, so to speak. So this occurs all the time in practices that are acquired. They might not be on an EHR or practice management system, or the buyers, they want to put Revolution in because that's what they've used, they're familiar with it, and they see the benefits of it. So Doc, maybe you can talk about this component of how you see, because this is a big deal. It's a really big deal of changing software, and it's a big investment and an extremely high return on investment. It might be the largest thing in your practice that you're buying, but go ahead, Doc, and talk about the migration or transition.
I agree. This slide, I'll share with those of you that are listening that I'm smiling because, believe it or not, this is the one thing. It's irony that I now work for an electronic health records company, because this was one of the biggest swings and misses I ever had when I had my practice. I started with a EHR that worked very well. We were on that system for 10 years. And then there were some things that I wasn't necessarily fond of and thought, okay, I think it's time to maybe shop around and find something else. We did that. But when we switched, I clearly didn't ask the right questions, and it was not a good fit for us. It was not a good fit for my staff. It made our kind of the amount of time we were spending at the office much later than and nobody was getting out of the office at 5 o'clock. And so here I am feeling stuck that I had made clearly not the best choice for the practice. Long story short, we went back, and then I waited a full 2 years before I switched to Revolution. And I remember when I had made the announcement, hey guys, we're going to switch. We were switching to Revolution. I had already lost all trust from my staff because I had a major, just an epic fail when we had attempted to do that 2 years prior. So the first thing I would say, to things that you should take into consideration when you're looking for a software is you really want to have a software partner. You want to have someone that is going to have flexible training. No two trainings are ever going to be the same, even with Revolution. There will be some similarities, yes, but all practices are different, so the needs are different. So that's going to be one thing that you're going to want, is to have training that's customized. In my case, I had a staff person. I had a office manager that was in her mid 50s. She was excellent at her job, but software did not come naturally. So she needed a lot of repetition and a lot of practice. Whereas I had younger, honestly, less experienced staff that did much better adapting to computer changes. So you'll want to just make those assessments too with your team, and you're going to have a good gauge of who's going to need that little extra and who won't, and try to do what you can to make those arrangements. What you don't want is you don't want to have more staff giving you pushback than being on board. I can promise you will have someone that's going to give you pushback on your team, but hopefully what will happen is you'll have enough staff members that have rallied around the change that they will kind of fill in the gaps for you and help to create kind of that support network. So in terms of training, that is very important. As you go on ahead and you're looking at what kind of options you want, the other thing too to take into consideration would be, with all of your equipment integrations, I always said, one of the things that I wanted to get away from was being so reliant on IT. So in the case of Revolution, since it is a truly cloud-based system, we were able to get rid of all of those IT expenses because we now had data that was secure in the cloud, and I didn't have to worry about expensive servers for backups and all of those things. So you want to also assess hardware needs and see how flexible those things are. With the rate of change that we're seeing with technology, I mean, it's kind of hard to keep up. And I don't see that slowing down. So oftentimes you might look at things and assess your needs one way, but truly 5 years from now, it might be something altogether different. So, you want to just, again, try to choose something that's going to grow with you. And then data migration, yes, that's another thing. If you're switching if you bought an existing practice and you're moving things over from a previous system, you're going to want to know what is that going to look like? What kinds of changes will we be needing to make to our workflow? How can we do that so that it doesn't stress out the staff or make us run behind where patients notice? And all of those things, a good EHR partner should be able to help you with those things, where they can go and sit down and show you, this is what you can expect. This is what it's going to look like when your data is migrated into the new system. So those, I would say, are probably the most important questions to ask.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, because change management, or when you're doing some software and that overlays the entire practice, yeah, planning it out is really important, I think, and getting the staff's buy-in, because you could there's many ways to get to Rome, but here's one in terms of a software migration to say Brad, you could have a meeting with your staff initially, because I don't know if I don't know necessarily if I was a dog practice owner if I would have them involved necessarily in the decision of which one I'm choosing. I probably wouldn't, but you could do that. You could have some presentations or
I'd
whatnot, but
lean
that's
towards no on that.
mhm.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I would lean towards no on that. I think, again, it goes back to my comments earlier about making sure you need to it's going to take a strong leader anytime you're dealing with change management, but specifically in the realm of an EHR. I think it would be wise. You could certainly ask your staff to say what features are most important to you,
Mhm.
and then you could take that
Great.
and use that as you do your own research to decide on a system. But I will tell you, the practices that I work with that are the most successful have a very, very good leader steering the ship, letting the staff know this is the direction we're going and this is why. When staff are the ones that are running things, you usually wind up with a scenario where there's just too many cooks in the kitchen.
Mhm.
So that would be my advice.
Good. Yeah, well, we're on the same page there, and um, what you can do as a say the practice owner, or if you're going to delegate it to a practice administrator on the deployment, is you can map out all the things that are necessary to get it done. Okay, so if they're on paper, okay, what are we going to do? Um, we're going to scan the records in, or we're going to input the data, we're going to put the fee schedules in, we're going to put the lens options in. Here's all the things that we need to get done. So we're going to communicate that to the staff. And then you're only as good as the slowest person on the team, so to speak. And so it's a team effort, because it overlays the whole practice. So getting buy-in in terms of the schedule, when things are going to get done, when we're going to go live, and potentially are we going to shut down for a half a day, or are we going to train, or are we going to see fewer patients initially until we get up to speed. But just getting the buy-in from the staff on this is how we're going to do it. So I agree, not necessarily on what we're going to the system, but basically getting the plan in place, and then okay, it's a go. And they're always going to have hiccups because it's complicated, but then you just work through those and to the point where okay, we're going live, and we're going to have full schedule, and this is the target date. So in my view, that's really important to get done. Otherwise, it can drag. Because I've seen situations where practice owners have bought the software and then just never really got it deployed for various reasons. But that's part of just getting the migration to happen, or the system changeover. So yeah, and having a great support back end with Revolution is super important also. So yeah, maybe we should go to another question. poll question. So where are you at in your ownership journey? So you might be buying, there might, I don't know if it's a multiple choice, but we'll just leave that with you. So you could be thinking about it, in the process of it, post, but there's various stages of that. So, all right, how are we doing for time here? I think we're on, yeah, we're gonna have to get moving a little bit. So, and we might just kind of rush through the rest so we can have at least 5 minutes. So we want to finish by the top of the hour, ideally. We'll stick around a little bit after if there's any other questions, but we'll try and finish up by the top of the hour. So with workflow, Doc, this is sort of our experience or on workflow. I would look at the workflow based on your patient demographic again. And because you've got 4 or 5 different pieces of it too, in a sense. You've got intake, you've got pre-test, you've got these the exam rooms, and you got optical, and you got the checkout, and then you've got the back office stuff that happens after the submission of the claim forms and the collection. But so there's various ways you can do this as a new owner. And again, I wouldn't necessarily change everything right away. I would wait a month or 2 at least, just to see how things are going, and then decide what your workflow and your practice is going to be. Like one of the things I like if I'm going into a optometry practice to get my eyes examined, the intake form, I don't want to fill it out. My handwriting's terrible. I'd prefer to have an interview and just tell the person. But some people are more private. They don't want to be talking to a person about their personal stuff, and so you could potentially give them a choice. But there's lots of different things that you can do. There's dispensary techs, of course, that go out into the optical with the patient, and they're hearing everything that the doctor has, and the doctor's communicating about the lens options, and then the tech goes out. Or you can do the handoff method. But in my view, it's really, I think you need to understand who your patient base is. For example, my mother, she's 88. She doesn't see very well at all. She would like to be walked through the whole, practice and be able to have someone kind of hold her hand, so to speak. But sometimes that's not practical, but it really depends on your patient. So I'll kick that over to you, Doc. That's my 2 cents on workflow.
No, I agree. I think you need to know what's working and what isn't, and then figure out how you're going to make change, how you're going to implement that. And then certainly now with technology, there's so many automations and things that you can do to help improve efficiency and take the burden off of your staff. I would, again, highly encourage everybody to utilize those and take advantage of those. And again, when you're looking at your EHR, they should have a number of options for you or answers to some of those pain points in terms of automations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something you can discuss with your staff if they see any bottlenecks or any issues in the practice so far, and talking to them. But yeah, that's great. So we'll move on. We'll go to the next poll question. What's your current practice management system situation? So EHR PM situation. So I'll give you a sec to respond to that, and we'll just move on here. Make sure I'm on the right slide. I thought I lost you for a sec, Doc, but I see you moved up here somehow on my screen, but that's all good. So technology is awesome, everyone, for patient retention. Like if I'm going into a practice and then to see my OD, and they say, "Hey, Brad, how are you doing today? Nice to see you." All that information, because they can see I'm roughly 60 or whatever, they can see that information. They might be able to ask me some questions of how my day was or whatever. So having all that information available to the staff right through the patient experience is extraordinarily important. And the technology, yeah, it's just absolutely wonderful for that. So the more documentation you have on the patient, their life, their patient history, anything about them, I think is better. And then the software systems like RevolutionEHR can just pull that up for pretty much anyone to find out about the patient, the doctor in the exam room, the optical area too. So But yeah, you can really leverage the software for patient retention. So I'll kick that over to you, Doc.
No, I agree with everything you said, Brad. And I think that the big thing too is and I still believe that today. That was my philosophy and practice, and even now, that, as a consumer, if you can have the opportunity to make some sort of a personal connection or a personal touch with them, they're going to be, the feeling will be that they're more binded to your business, and your practice is no different. So being able to leverage technology for retention in terms of recalls and recare, if you're going to go ahead through the system to try to, say, hey, it's been a long time since you've been in for an eye exam. Would you like to come in? We have an opening today. Now there's the opportunity to do that with technology, but even, taking it one step further, little things, just wishing somebody a happy birthday or a happy anniversary. You could even run reports too if there's specific milestones that you like to keep up with, and those get documented in the software. You can run reports on that. To maybe you're going to go on ahead and send them, there was something very monumental. Maybe they got engaged or had a baby, and you want to just send them a congratulatory note. So definitely, I think all of those things really, really do matter to people, and it ultimately will kind of help to solidify their commitment to your business.
Hmm. Yeah, the software is extremely important for that. So some doctors will have a little huddle in the morning, and then maybe for the first 4 hours, and then just before lunch or whatever, just who's on the schedule, who's coming in, what are their issues, that type of thing. So it's really valuable. 30 years ago, you just couldn't do that because you didn't have like systems like Rev that can just really pull up that data quickly. So uh, next poll question: what is your biggest operational challenge right now? What is your biggest operational challenge right now in your practice? That's a great question. All right. Um, yeah, we kind of touched on this being patient-centric already, and the software systems really help with that. So that's all I'll say, Doc, so we can move on. But if you want to touch on this a little bit more, by all means.
No, I think that we've covered. We can keep going
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sake of
good.
time.
Yeah, sounds good. And then where are we here? Yeah, the communicating regularly. Yeah, it's so good. Like if you're, and the PM systems can do this extremely well. If you have a new frame line coming in, or if you've got a new piece of equipment, or you're expanding the scope of your practice, or the patient hasn't been in for a while, there's so many things and this also goes to your growth that we talked about earlier, of just leveraging the software to be able to communicate to your patients. So yes, it's great to be in 2025 with this sort of stuff. And question is, I guess software is great for um, data storage and data retrieval. It's been historically a little more difficult in the data entry because some people type slower, or so that's the more challenging part of it. Like especially for me, I don't type all that well, but I think there's AI tools and recording tools that are coming down the pipeline, so to speak, that are going to make actually data entry a little more easy. But the more patient information you can capture, the better. But you can touch on that if you want, Doc, and I think I think we're pretty much at the end of the content. So
Okay. Yeah, yes. I mean, I think that there's a number of things that, there's so many new tools now, but just as I'm looking at the slide, I kind of echoes what I had just said about just regular kind of touch point communication with the patient. But definitely too, you can also, if you're wanting to, explore some of there's some really, really new tools or newer tools now with technology where you can kind of speak to text, where you can go on ahead and it will help with your charting. And I think that all of those things are really, really important, because what it will do is, if you can tap into those kinds of efficiencies too, my experience is then practices are more happy. Doctors feel more accomplished. They're getting things finished up in a more timely manner. And then it frees you up to do some of these other things, even if it's just spending an extra 15 minutes at the end of the day to reflect on what went well and what didn't go well. What could we do better tomorrow? What kinds of things could we implement again to just help to drive that, patient satisfaction and customer loyalty to my brand and my practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's absolutely right. So we do have a couple questions. The first one's maybe I'll go the last poll question. That's great. We got all 5 in. Curious to learn more about how we can help your practice. So that's a question. If you are, let us know. We'll be happy to reach out after. So curious to learn more about how we can help your practice. So it's a really nice comment we got from Dr. John, saying, I work remotely and joined a new practice. Might not be the doctor, I made the assumption, so it doesn't matter. I work remotely and joined a new practice, already using Rev. And I have to say the Rev support staff is top notch and very, very patient. So that's super nice to see.
Thank you for that. We try. We do have all of our, for those of you that don't know, I do want to give a shout out just for a moment to our customer service team, because that is one of the things that drove me to Revolution. And that is that our customer support reps, it is a requirement. They cannot work as a customer support rep at Revolution unless they have had 2 years of experience within the industry. So that means they have worked in an optical, or they've worked in an optometry or an ophthalmology practice, which makes them very, very familiar with workflow, and also with all of the snafus and hiccups and things that can also happen throughout the course of the day. So thank you. I am going to make sure that I share that comment back with our customer support lead as well.
Yeah, that was super nice of you. All right, next question is, and this will be a question for you, Doc. Do you have a list of reports that shows the easiest way to pull that information from Revolution? That question is from Amy Rydar. I might be pronouncing that wrong, but so I'll read that question again. Do you have a list of reports that show the easiest way to pull that information from Revolution?
So I'm not sure what that information is. So I'm going to do my best to just answer that question kind of broadly. And if I don't answer it to your liking, make sure you reach out to me after the webinar. I'd be happy to chat with you. But in a nutshell, yes. One of the things that you can do in Revolution is we have a number of reports that are already within the system. And those reports include, you can run reporting on scheduling. You can run reporting on pre-appoints, on canceled appointments, no-showed appointments, rescheduled appointments. You can do it on recalls, recare. A number of things, one of the reports, and then you can create custom reports too. So, an example that comes to mind, I created a custom report that worked well for us. We were finding that I didn't like it when patients came back a year later and I said, how are you doing with your glasses? And they say, well, honestly, I haven't worn them. They just really, I'm wearing my old glasses. And so we created a report to help mitigate that. And that if a patient comes in for an adjustment, that gets logged as an encounter, and we could run the report and see any comments. So if a patient was, coming in for repeated adjustments, rather than us just say, okay, the patient's not complaining or not, they're evidently they're doing okay. We didn't make that assumption. It was just a standard process in the office that they go on ahead and they'd follow up with that patient. And we'd call them to say, hey, how are your glasses working out? And more than half the time they'd say they're not. I just don't want to be a burden. I'm sure it's me. I'm sure it's not the doctor. I'm sure it's me. And we use that as an opportunity to say, absolutely not. The doctor is going to want to see you back. And it gave me a chance to, fix things. And then also it's another touch point with that patient. So, but long story, yes, you can do a number of reports. We have a number of those reports already in the system, but really the sky is the limit in terms of those customizations that you can make as well.
Thank you, Dr. Kerksick. Appreciate that. Yeah, so it's been a delight talking to you today. And that was the last, we had 2 questions there, and we're basically right at the top of the hour. So I think we'll just let you all go, so to speak. So Doc, so we have your email up here, so anyone can get a hold of you
Yes,
with email, so that's great. We'll probably send out this.
absolutely. I was
Yeah,
just going to add real quick, Brad, for anybody that's on the call that's a user of Revolution. One of the things that I do that's just a part of my day to day is, and I love doing that. That's honestly my favorite thing, is to work with customers and come up with ways that we can make them better. I like to go through workflow processes to see how can we make you more efficient. Are there elements of the software that you are not using that could be helpful for you? So don't hesitate to reach out. If you've got a specific, question about the software, I'm happy to help you, or you can reach out directly to customer support.
great. That sounds great. So thank you very much. Like I said, it's been delightful just learning a little bit about you and and Rev. And like I said, I've known it for a long time, and our consulting team and myself personally, I don't think quite frankly, I've ever heard a negative comment. And I'm honest as can be, a negative thing about Rev. So that's great. So everyone's happy that you all decided to start the first web-based practice management system in 2008. So we're all kind of grateful that you all started to do that. So thank you very much again, and appreciate everyone that's been on the webinar. So we will shoot this out also for anyone that wasn't able to attend live. We'll send it out, the recording, and yeah, if you have any questions, our emails are here. So thank you very much again.
Thank you. Have a nice day, everybody.
Yeah, have a great day, everyone.